a devoted mother working to carve out a new life,
She's very religious, believes in family.
She would help anyone.
is murdered in her own home.
She had clearly been under attack when she reached for the phone.
It was devastating.
Detectives follow the evidence down a twisted path.
Who was this person?
He's giving envelopes of money to Monica.
In her mind, they were going to be married until death do them part.
After a number of suspects emerge,
They jokingly referred to themselves as the Orange Shorts Society.
He cried, but it was very fake.
Monica told me if anything ever happens to me, that he was responsible.
the killer is someone no one could have predicted.
The whole thing was just surreal.
And I'm like, oh my God, you own.
It's a small, proud community where everyone knows their neighbor by name.
It wasn't really even a town, it was rural. Good, decent people. You could just keep the doors open on warm days, sitting on the porch and just relaxing and enjoying the peace.
It's a rural area in central Pennsylvania, so it's not typical for a violent crime to occur, and if it does occur, it's an abnormality.
On a spring afternoon in 2010, that peaceful atmosphere is interrupted when dispatchers at York County Control get a mysterious call.
Someone had dialed 911,
911.
and no one was saying anything.
Hello?
The dispatcher that received the call was inquiring, hello, is anyone there? So the protocol at the time was hang up and call it back. They received a busy signal, so the phone was off the hook. They dispatched Southwestern Regional Police. A patrolman entered the residence and announced himself that he was with law enforcement. And as he made a right into the living room area, he discovered the body. There was a lot of blood around her head, as well as on the floor.
A forensics team arrives within minutes, with 2 homicide detectives following close behind.
The victim was found lying in almost like a fetal position.
They find the victim's driver's license, which identifies her as 55-year-old Monica Schmeier. Closer inspection of the body reveals she met a violent end.
She had clearly been under attack when she reached for the phone to try to call for help.
There was a telephone with the receiver off just above her body, lying there, and there was some blood on the 9 and the 1 of the telephone.
Very close to Monica's body, detectives find an important piece of evidence.
We located a small shell casing that was lying on the ground. We searched for a firearm or ammunition, a holster, anything that would lead us to believe that there would have been a gun in the house. There was none located.
The forensics team pores over the crime scene, hoping to turn up something that can help them understand the crime.
We did fingerprinting, we did photography, we searched around the house. There was nothing there to lead us to believe that it was a home invasion, and it was very mysterious to us as far as, what happened here.
Another detail suggests Monica wasn't the victim of a robbery gone wrong.
We did locate some cash in the home that were in white envelopes that were on the bookshelf. We found cash in bins that were packed up that you could visibly see as you walked around the house.
The envelopes we found were very easy to see. Some of them would have maybe $100 in them. Some of them only had a few dollars. Each one of them had a designation on the envelope, like to the church or for a bill or something like that.
Investigators begin collecting forensic evidence for further analysis.
The evidence we collected in the home consisted of the money envelopes, the blood evidence, scrapings from the phone, from the floor, and fingerprints. A Rolodex was found On the Rolodex, we found some close contact information.
While forensics continue their work at the scene, detectives track down Monica's family to deliver the terrible news.
Monica had 2 adult daughters, Veronica and Elsa, and they were not living at home at the time of her killing. Veronica was in Florida, and Elsa was out of the country.
Both daughters are stunned by the murder and say that their mother was known for her charity, which had only increased since their parents' divorce.
Monica Schmeier's daughters said that she would help anyone, extremely generous, volunteered her time in the community, was a devout Catholic, very involved in her church.
Monica's brother, Eric, is no less shocked when police inform him of his sister's murder.
It was April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. I'm thinking, is this a prank? What, my sister's been killed? It was devastating. Monica was not only my sister, she was my next door neighbor.
Detectives ask Eric to tell them more about his sister, in the hope that something from her past will point them toward her killer.
We were raised in a Catholic family in northern New Jersey. We had a simple, frugal life. 5 siblings. I was the eldest and she was the 4th. She was the smartest out of all 5 of us. Monica was very studious and very determined. Even when she was a little kid, she was a bookworm. She aced everything through college, grammar school, high school. Monica studied like crazy and went to medical school. She was going to do her internship. She was starting it in New York City.
As Monica was chasing her dreams, her life took an unexpected turn.
She met John Schmeier, and they fell in love. She became pregnant, and that was a surprise to both of them.
The young couple got married in 1981 and began building a happy life together.
Monica became a mother, and she felt that she had really found her niche. And she just loved being a mother. John, he went and got his degrees, and he became an ophthalmologist and was offered a position in Hanover, Pennsylvania. They asked me to come along and be the office manager.
With John busy at work, Monica focused on motherhood and let her own career go by the wayside.
She was supposed to do her internship, then she got pregnant again. I don't know how expected that was, but she loved it. Her focus became being a mother. She was dedicated to John and her 2 daughters. A nice wooden house with 60 acres. That's what she wanted more than anything. John gave that to her.
Over the years, John's career thrived, but the couple's marriage began to suffer. In 2003, after 22 years of marriage, he asked Monica for a divorce.
She was devastated. She was so much in love with John. She's very religious, believes in family, so she didn't want to agree to divorce. She got suicidal and she went into a depression. All she did was just cry, and you could see how miserable she felt. I was worried about Monica, but I felt if Monica needed any help, I was right down the street.
Finally, in 2008, after 5 years of resisting, Monica agreed to sign the divorce papers. Their unusual settlement agreement helps investigators understand why Monica had envelopes of cash stashed around her house.
John was paying Monica $1,700 a month in alimony. He had also given her the family home and much of their savings because it was him who wanted that divorce, not her.
There was alimony being paid, but he did so in cash, which was weird because Monica didn't have a bank account.
Monica Schmeier did not like to use banks, didn't trust them, preferred to keep the cash in her home.
But with Monica having no other source of income, John grew wary of the arrangement.
John was pissed off that he had to pay her in cash. He was upset that he had to pay her bills for her. He paid for everything.
Could John's resentment have grown so great he wanted Monica dead? When detectives ask Eric, his answer is shocking.
Monica told me if anything ever happens to me, John is responsible because she was scared that John would do something to hurt her.
Coming up, does a grieving spouse have something to hide?
He cried, but there were no tears. It was very fake.
A surprising lead sends the case in a new direction.
What struck me most is how utterly random it was.
And the truth blindsides everyone.
It was like an aha moment for me. Why did
York County Police investigating the horrific murder of Monica Schmeier have reason to be suspicious of Monica's ex-husband, John.
We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had stated that if anything ever happened to her, that John would be responsible for that.
Investigators quickly head over to John's house. When they tell him about Monica's murder, they're surprised by his behavior.
John reacted in a way that was very awkward and very unusual, something that in my years I'd never seen. Oh my God, he put his hand across his chest.
Maybe some of it was a little fake. Maybe the clutching of the heart was a little fake.
He began to cry, would probably be a stretch. There were no tears. Myself, I do believe it was very fake. He covered his face, would look up and see if we were watching him. And as he's doing this, it's like, oh my God, this is just so weird. And it's like, is he involved?
Detectives asked John to come down to the precinct to talk.
He explained to me about this weird and unusual arrangement that he had with Monica. The envelopes that we found in the home would be labeled like electric bill, water bill, mortgage, whatever, but they were used to give back to John so that John could then pay her bills. So we're looking at this from the outside, wondering what the hell's going on, that he's paying her in cash. She is now taking cash, putting it in envelopes, giving it back to John. John's then writing a check to pay her electric bill. So it was fueling that frustration and animosity in John's perspective. He's still doing everything for Monica, even though they're not married anymore. Because being a devout Catholic, Monica didn't care they were divorced. In her mind, they were still married, and they were going to be married until death do they part.
John admits that the situation bothered him, but he says he'd never resort to murder.
He agreed. It's very frustrating. It was very much a pain for him to do all this stuff, but he couldn't get rid of her, is for lack of a better phrase.
Anxious to prove his innocence, John provides police with an alibi.
He was able to provide us with a detailed explanation as to what he had done that day, where he was, and who he was with.
John tells the detectives he was meeting with an acquaintance named Sarah Powell before the two of them joined up with a larger group at a local restaurant.
And I asked him if he has information that can verify his alibi, and he was able to provide me with a cell phone number for Sarah Powell. We wrapped up the interviews. We advised John Schmeier to stay away from the home. We may need to go back there at some point in time just to stay out of it. We had a secure scene.
The next day, detectives speak with Sarah Powell to confirm John's alibi.
She revealed to me that yes, I was with John Schmeier yesterday. She had been with him for lunch at a restaurant where they were discussing online trading, that John experimented with that and he enjoyed doing it, and she was looking to get involved in it to try to make some extra money.
Sarah and her fiance knew John Schmeier from a group that met frequently at a local restaurant.
John had started meeting with a group of people at Hooters restaurant, sometimes a few times a month. They jokingly referred to themselves as the Orange Shorts Society, or OSS.
It was a place where they would go and just hang out and, drink beer and eat wings.
After their meeting, John and Sarah had met up with the larger OSS group.
When I asked her who all was there, she was able to provide information that matched John's as far as who all was present that day.
Investigators tracked down the rest of the OSS members at the meeting, and each one of them echoes John and Sarah's story. But they also share something else about John's relationship with Monica.
At these OSS meetings, John would say that he was frustrated with her and he was trying to move on with his life, but yet Monica was always there in his business.
Even though his alibi is confirmed, John appears to have a clear motive for murder, which makes him suspicious to police. So they ask him to take a lie detector test.
John submitted to a polygraph examination. John's polygraph was inconclusive, which means that we were unable to determine whether he was being truthful or not.
The test results have police mulling over a new theory.
Well, if John has an alibi, well, then maybe there's something else going on here that we need to look into. Theoretically, what if he paid somebody to kill her? We started really looking at John as far as, a murder for hire, that theory.
There was money involved, and certainly divorces can be acrimonious. He certainly was somebody they continued to look at.
Detective suspicions about John are stoked yet again when they get a troubling call from Monica's brother, Eric.
I told them that John comes to the door at about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. And then John went into explaining that he went to Monica's house. John was not supposed to go to the house. He was told not to go there. He went there anyway.
Now that set a bell off for us. What the hell?
Detectives are eyeing John Schmeier in the murder case of his wife, Monica, after learning that he returned to the crime scene just hours after being questioned by police.
We learned from Eric, Monica's brother, that John Schmeier disregarded what we had asked him and actually went to the scene to see what had happened and gone into the house, had looked around, had walked around.
John's behavior is not only suspicious, but could have damaged the investigation.
Anything further that we wanted to do there had been jeopardized because the scene was no longer secure at that point. With John not following our request, it's another arrow in our quiver as far as, the person of interest, just another little check mark.
The day after the murder, police canvassed the neighborhood around Monica's home.
Patrol officers went out and spoke with neighbors, were able to locate people that saw something suspicious that was out of the ordinary the afternoon of March 31st. The first witness Patrol located was Mr. Kegerice. He lives up the hill from Monica Schmeier. Mr. Kegerice advised that the afternoon of March 31st, he noticed a gentleman coming down the hill. And he said it was kind of unusual. He'd never seen the guy before that afternoon. He sees this same gentleman now walking with a purpose, is how he describes it, back up the hill with what he believes to be a white envelope in his hand. So now we're putting 2 to 2 together. Oh, white envelope. We had white envelopes in the house. Those white envelopes contained cash. Why is this guy in the middle of nowhere, then comes back, and now he has an envelope, and he's walking with a purpose. Patrol also located a second witness, Mr. Crawford, who lived a little further up the hill. And Mr. Crawford was able to tell us that he was coming up the road from the Schmeier residence, and he noticed a gentleman walking up the roadway, which was unusual because there's not a lot of foot traffic out where these guys live. And Mr. Crawford also said you can see up the hill a silver van. And he describes it as a work van. It's not a soccer mom van. It's just your regular panel work van. Patrol was able to locate some tire tracks in the grass where that van, you could see where it did like a 3-point turn, turned around and went back up the hill. So now we have a direction of travel.
Investigators conclude the van headed towards a village called Jefferson.
In Jefferson, there's a bank. Now that bank has a camera that's facing out. So what we figured was, well, we'll get a search warrant, we'll grab the bank video as well as an ATM for March 31st. If the suspect had made a left, he goes towards Jefferson. If he makes a right, he goes to Maryland. We have a 50-50 shot, whether or not we got this van.
Investigators keep their fingers crossed as they comb through the poor quality video.
And I looked through a video looking for silver vans, and I was able to find numerous silver vans that were coming through and going back on that day. We were looking for a needle in a haystack. We had a van. We now had, a possible suspect. We had the white envelopes. We had, all this information, but yet we still were getting nowhere.
3 days after the murder, investigators get the autopsy report, which they hope can help shed some light on the circumstances of Monica's death.
Miss Schmeier had been murdered with a single gunshot wound to the head, right above her eye. What also was found was she had a lot of trauma to the right side of her face and her cheek and lips area, indicating that there had been a struggle.
I told them that Monica would fight. Monica had no fear. She had no fear of death. Monica did not care. She would go after the guy and scratched him. When I told the police that, they checked for DNA under their fingernails.
The fingernail scrapings, we sent them off to the forensic lab for analysis for DNA.
While they wait for the results, detectives focus on anyone Monica would have trusted to come to the house.
We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had a handyman that would take care of things for her.
He lived a pretty good distance from her house. He would come down and did a lot of work for her, trimming trees and stuff. He did come often, and he didn't charge her for anything. That did seem suspicious to us at the time, and we kind of thought there might have been a relationship there.
Now, this handyman was married, but yet he spent a lot of time with Monica. As an investigator, you look at who normally kills you. It's someone you know, someone you have a relationship with. There's a thin line between love and hate, and that's where, our suspicions were, okay, well then maybe there's something else going on here.
Detectives investigating the homicide of 55-year-old Monica Schmeier have learned that Monica may have had a relationship with a handyman who did work for her around the house.
He would cut her grass, would do odd jobs around the house, take care of things for her, and she would often be seen like having lunch with him, or there was a relationship there. Now, we didn't know how strong that relationship or how intimate that relationship was.
Monica's brother, Eric, can offer investigators little insight into his sister's recent personal life.
In the beginning, we visited often, and then John left. Even though she was my next-door neighbor, she became isolated from me, and in a way, I didn't know what was going on.
Detectives asked the handyman to come down to the station for an interview.
When we asked him where he was at the time of the murder, he told the investigator that he had been working at a residence within a gated community in Adams County, about 40 miles away.
Unwilling to take him at his word, detectives check into his alibi.
We were able to substantiate that based off of the gate log as well as the video that was there that showed him coming in early in the morning and leaving after the 911 call would have been placed. So we were able to eliminate him as a possible person of interest in this investigation.
With the handyman in the clear, detectives are running out of possible suspects.
We looked at everyone. We looked at the UPS driver who delivered a package that day. We looked at the mailman. We looked at the exterminator. We looked at people that she knew from the dry cleaners. Anywhere we could find information about Mrs. Schmeier, we talked to those people because we were at wit's end as far as who could have done this and why would they have done it.
The passing weeks start to take an emotional toll on Monica's friends and family.
Everybody back home is waiting for something to happen, something. And then I got to the point, and I think the rest of the family, it's just going to be one of those things. You know, we're just going to, the guy maybe gets away with it or whatever.
Just seemed as if they were never going to solve it. And I think people were concerned, what if it was random? Because if it was random, it can happen again.
A month into the investigation, Detective Damagon decides to take a fresh look at all the evidence they have so far.
I was sitting at my desk in my office, and I have my notepad, and I'm going through all my notes from the scene.
The investigators circle back to Monica's ex, John, and his friends at the Orange Short Society.
I'm flipping through my notebook, and I get to my interview with Sarah Powell. Reading that, going back through that.
Fellow Orange Short Society member Sarah Powell had confirmed John's alibi. But now another detail suddenly jumps out to the detective.
And immediately, a light bulb goes off, and I recall, Sarah Powell telling me, my fiance is usually there, but he wasn't yesterday.
Sarah's fiance, Timothy Jacoby, is also a member of the Orange Short Society. But because he was unable to confirm John's alibi on the day of the murder, he had been off investigators' radar until now.
Come to find out, he has a master's degree, he's college educated, he's a U.S. Air Force veteran. He made, better than average money.
But when police search Timothy's name in their database, they make an alarming discovery.
He had a prior arrest for a robbery of a jewelry store involving a firearm.
Scooped up, I think it was close to $48,000 worth of jewelry. Turned around and ran out and dropped all the loot as he was running. They still caught him. He served prison time for that.
An ex-con who's friends with John Schmeier. The discovery reignites detectives' murder-for-hire theory.
We're lacking the nexus between Tim and Monica, and that's where the investigation kind of pivots to John Schmeier again.
Clearly he didn't do it himself, but he could have paid someone to do it.
Detective suspicions intensify when they check John's phone records.
In John's cell phone records, we found a phone call the day of the murder from John to Tim Jacoby. And I'm like, oh my God. It was like an aha moment for me. So all this is beginning to fit together. We had information from Eric, Monica's brother, that Monica had stated at some point in time that if anything ever happens to me, John did it. So we were looking, did John Schmeier and Tim Jacoby conspire to kill Monica Schmeier.
When police discover that John Schmeier's friend, Timothy Jacoby, is a convicted felon, they wonder if Schmeier may have commissioned him to murder his wife, Monica.
I run him for firearms, and what does he own? A Kel-Tec 32 automatic, which is one of the manufacturers we're looking for. So again, another flag goes up. Now we got to tie him to a van.
Was Jacoby the man witnesses saw driving the silver van close to Monica's house around the time of the murder?
But the problem we're seeing now is he doesn't own a van. We then identified where he worked, and he has access to a silver work van that they sign out on a calendar. You just go in and you check the calendar. If it's available, you put your initials in there, and on Tuesday you get the van.
Investigators asked for the company's logbook to see if Timothy had the van when Monica was killed.
We're going through it, and wouldn't you know it, there's only 11 months there. And the 1 month is missing is March 31st. It's the date of the murder. Once we found that Tim Jacoby had access to a van, we checked that bank surveillance video, and we were able to locate a van that's the same make and model as the one that Tim Jacoby had access to, coming out a route that would lead someone towards Tim's home.
The evidence piling up against Jacoby is compelling, but detectives will need something more concrete if they're to file charges.
We make the decision we're going to hit Tim's house with a search warrant. Tim did not say one word. Not why are you guys here, what's going on, nothing. Silence, other than a smirk on his face.
The search quickly uncovers damning evidence.
We found a firearm that had been stolen in a burglary in Florida some years before. So Tim, being a felon, he was not to possess any kind of firearm, and he was currently on parole, so we charged him with possession of a firearm as well as receiving stolen property. His parole was violated, and he was put in jail.
In addition to the stolen gun, investigators find a strange piece of evidence that leaves them scratching their heads.
In a detached shed that was on the property, we found a small barrel about, that long, maybe 2.5 inches long. And it appeared to me that it was consistent with a 32 or a small caliber firearm barrel.
Could this barrel be part of the murder weapon? While it's sent to the lab for analysis, detectives have some questions for Jacoby. But Jacoby isn't interested in talking.
Tim invoked his right to counsel, advised that he didn't have anything to say, and that he wanted his attorney present.
While Jacoby stonewalls, detectives question his fiancée.
When we interviewed Sarah denied any involvement to the point where she was physically upset. I then further inquired with Sarah if she'd ever seen this small black firearm that would fit in like the palm of my hand, a 32 ACP firearm to match the shell casing we found at the scene. And she said yes, that she had been with Tim when he had shot it. And she advised that it was at Tim's parents' place on a covered porch that's behind their farm, and they would shoot up towards a field.
Police quickly file a search warrant and begin scouring Tim's parents' property, starting with the house.
We found the box for a 32 ACP firearm, but we didn't find the gun. I went out back looking in the grass, trying to find, a shell casing, something that's going to help us. We didn't find anything.
To connect Tim to Monica's murder, detectives need to find the gun or the shell casings that match the ones found at the crime scene.
At that point, I'm standing on the decking of this porch, and I look down. The boards are spaced in a way that they're, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch apart. Light bulb goes off. I look at these two guys and said, did anybody go underneath? And they said, I don't think so. And I'll never forget, I'm standing there. They weren't underneath the platform for, 30 seconds. And the one officer says, are you looking for a 32? And I said, man, don't screw with me like that. And he goes, here you go. And he holds one out from underneath the porch. He goes, oh, here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. The shell casings we found at the Jacoby farm were matched up with the shell casing from the murder scene. The gun that fired the shot that killed Monica Schmeier is the same gun that fired those rounds that we found at the farm.
But before detectives could bring murder charges against him, one question was crucial to their case. Why would Tim Jacoby kill Monica Schmeier?
Police determined that he had never met Monica, had nothing against Monica, and the only way he knew her was through her husband.
To detectives, it was looking more and more like Tim didn't act alone.
John's alibi was airtight in the sense that he could not have physically committed that crime. However, that didn't clear him with police, because certainly he could have hired Tim Jacoby.
Anxious to get the truth once and for all, detectives confront the man they've suspected all along.
I went down to Virginia, where Dr. Schmeier was now residing, because we were not 100% sure that John didn't have anything to do with the homicide.
Police have strong evidence implicating Tim Jacoby in the murder of Monica Schmeier. But they suspect that Monica's ex-husband, John, may have ordered the hit.
We've identified Tim Jacoby as a suspect, but now we need a motive. Well, how does Tim Jacoby know Monica Schmeier? Because he doesn't know her, but he knows John. Did John Schmeier and Tim Jacoby conspire to kill Monica Schmeier?
John and Tim would socialize together. According to John, that's where Tim learned about Monica and the envelopes of money.
When we questioned him further, he said Tim knew that Monica would have cash at the house because that's what John told everyone. He knew that Monica lived by herself because that's what John told everyone. Tim Jacoby took that information and he devised in his mind the perfect crime.
It's a plausible motive. Still, to test the theory that John may have paid Tim to carry out the murder, detectives searched the financial records of both men.
We're trying to find any kind of financial connection between John and Tim. We left no stone unturned. We were finding nothing.
Yet detectives know that John had placed a call to Jacoby on the day of the murder.
When we inquired with John about why this phone call had been made, he related that, he had called Tim to let him know that he was meeting with Sarah because he didn't want Tim to think there was some kind of relationship between them or that John was trying to formulate a relationship with Sarah.
Without any evidence to implicate John in his wife's murder, detectives finally clear him as a suspect.
I believe that John, as quirky as he may be, had nothing to do with the homicide of Monica Schmeier. No one other than Tim Jacoby committed this crime.
On October 9th, 2012, Timothy Jacoby is charged with first-degree murder.
Someone she had never met that John knew. The whole thing was just surreal.
2 years later, the case goes to trial, and prosecutors lay out how they believe Monica's murder unfolded.
We believe that afternoon, Tim signed out the van in Lancaster County. He came across, parked the van, walked up to the home, Whether he knocked on the door or he rushed the house, whatever, he overtook Monica, whether it was by surprise or by force. At some point, she made a run for the phone, at which point she brought the phone up to make the call, and she was shot.
Worried police are on their way, Jacoby panics.
Tim, in haste, grabs what he sees on the counter, walking with a purpose, with an envelope in his hand, and leaves.
Jacoby tries to cover his tracks by tampering with the logbook and murder weapon.
It showed that Jacoby was trying to erase every bit of evidence that might tie him to this crime.
So far, the evidence is circumstantial. So prosecutors turn to the results of a specialist YSTR DNA test.
A YSTR tests for specifically the male Y chromosome. They ran the YSTR test on the fingernail scrapings of Monica Schmeier, and they found a complete Y profile of the male Jacoby lineage. We eliminated his brothers and his father as having anything to do with it based off of alibis, other circumstantial evidence.
On October 8th, 2014, the jury finds Jacoby guilty of first-degree murder, burglary, tampering with physical evidence, and robbery.
Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to death. That's justice in my eyes.
Maybe there was a sense of relief and closure.
A teenager is missing. A police investigation exposes the deaths of dozens of boys and young men. All are traced to a single killer. A photographer turns to rape and torture, meticulously documenting his crimes on film and audio tape. In a quiet suburb, 4 people are found dead. Police wonder about the kind of madman who could commit this crime. For serial killers, one death is just the beginning. Obsessed, they strike again and again, learning more with each crime, improving, perfecting. They're confident they'll never be stopped. But the mind hunters work tirelessly for their capture. It's just after 6 o'clock on January 23, 1978, in California, when Sacramento County Police arrive at the home of Terry and David Wallen. They are called there by a neighbor at David's frantic request. 22-year-old Terry Wallen has been brutally murdered. The house shows signs of an intense struggle between Wallen and her killer. She has been shot and her body slashed. A large knife wound runs the length of her torso. Some of her internal organs have been removed. Investigators are horrified by the viciousness of the crime. The scene becomes more gruesome when they find evidence that suggests the killer might have consumed Wallen's blood. Officers find a yogurt cup with bloody lip prints around the rim. Sacramento police don't know what to make of the scene, but they know who can help them. They call on a specialist, a man who's familiar with horrific and bizarre murder cases. His name is Russ Vorpagel. He is a special agent with the FBI. The brutality of the slaying makes Vorpagel fear that the murderer couldn't control himself, and that Terry Wallen's death may be just the beginning of his rampage.
There's just no need to disembowel a victim. There's no need to reach inside and cut out body parts. There's no need to cut a 4-inch piece of major artery and take it along with you. I mean, hey, we knew we had a nut and we were worried and we knew that something's going to happen.
Vorpagel called a colleague at the FBI. Robert Ressler has tracked and caught some of the world's most dangerous killers. As a criminal profiler for the FBI, he stakes out the darkest corners of a killer's mind. In the 1970s, he was one of the first to use the term serial killer to describe those who murder again and again. Robert Ressler is a mind hunter. Ressler struggles to understand the killer's mind by studying the crime scene. Knowing how the killer thinks is essential to predicting his next move. When will he strike? Who will he target?
You have to have an emotional need to solve a crime. You have to want to know who the offender was. You have to know what that person is, what he's like. What he was like before, during, and after the crime.
But there is a danger in identifying too closely with those who destroy. Ressler heeds the words of German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who wrote that whoever fights monsters should not become a monster himself, and that when one looks into an abyss, the unblinking abyss stares directly back. For Robert Ressler, Nietzsche's observation is motivation and warning.
Looking into the abyss to me means looking into the depths, the deep crevices, the dark crevices of man's human mind. And when it says the abyss looks back, to me that means I'm looking back at myself. I'm seeing my reflection. Because in every horrible killer, yourself is in there somewhere in part. Somewhere in your life you could have gone that same road.
In the 1970s, Ressler was among the original members of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, the first FBI program to systematically research a killer's motivations. Ressler interviewed some of America's most notorious murderers in prison to learn about their habits and attitudes. Today, Ressler is a private consultant who works all over the world to help solve serial murders. In January of 1978, Ressler applied his knowledge to help Sacramento County investigators devise a psychological profile of Terry Wallen's murderer. It was the first step in tracking the killer. Ressler began his profile by examining the crime scene details.
What you look for at a crime scene is the positioning of the body, the way the body was left by the killer. You look at the state of the body from the standpoint of being clothed or unclothed, and of course you're looking for available weaponry, or did the killer take a weapon to the scene, use it, and take it away. These are all things that you really start sizing up in your head.
After Terry Wallen was shot, the killer cut her body with knives taken from her own kitchen. Then he left them in plain sight at the scene, a detail that would prove instructive for Ressler. Because the greatest number of serial killers are male, at the time, Vorpagel and Ressler conclude their suspect is a man. They also assume he's white, like the majority of American serial killers. The brutality of the crime and the killer's apparent disregard for leaving evidence behind convince the pair their subject is mentally ill. That helps them pinpoint the killer's age. Ressler knows that mental illness usually begins in adolescence. It would take at least 8 years for the killer to grow sick enough to perform the acts of violence he inflicted on Terry Wallen. Assuming symptoms began at age 15, Ressler figures the killer would be in his mid to late 20s. Any older, and he would have already committed several gruesome homicides. Ressler goes further. He believes the killer to be schizophrenic, a mental illness characterized by delusions, hallucinations, and bizarre behavior.
Get out of here! Get out of here!
The heinous nature of the crime points to full-blown psychosis, a total loss of contact with reality. Because he drinks the blood of his victims, investigators call him the vampire killer. From his office in Virginia, Ressler works feverishly with Vorpagel in Sacramento to refine the killer's profile. What would he look like? They are convinced police should look for someone thin. Male schizophrenics generally eat poorly when they eat at all. And Russ Vorpagel believes the murderer will pay little attention to his appearance.
A guy that is suffering from a major mental illness is probably going to have a deterioration in his hygiene. Probably doesn't cut his hair, wears the same clothes for weeks at a time, doesn't brush his teeth, is scroungy looking.
Given his bizarre behavior, the killer would likely live alone. Vorpagel delivers a copy of the profile to the Sacramento police to circulate throughout the county. But no strong suspect emerges. The vampire killer remains at large. Will the profilers find him before he kills again?
Sir?
3 days after Terry Wallen's brutal murder in 1978, less than a mile away from her house, the vampire killer strikes again. Police find the bodies of Daniel Meredith, Evelyn Miroff, and her son Jason. Missing and presumed dead is Miroff's 22-month-old nephew, Michael Ferriera. These new deaths convince Ressler and Vorpagel that unless this murderer is found quickly, he will strike again. The mind hunters redouble their efforts. Using information gathered from this crime scene, they refine their original profile. Again, the vampire killer shot his victims. Again, he used knives taken from the victim's kitchen. Two knives are found in the room, and another was found outside. He doesn't seem to care that he's left the weapons behind. These details tell profilers that the killer is not planning his crimes. Although he brings a gun, he cuts the bodies with weapons he finds at the scene and then leaves them there.
We have a knife that was used to mutilate the bodies. It was taken from the kitchen, used on the victim, and then discarded at the crime scene. Seeing this for a second time definitely reinforced in my mind that we were dealing with a highly disorganized killer.
Organized and disorganized. These words describe a serial killer's behavior before, during, and after a murder. Organized serial killers carefully plot their moves. They cover their trail so thoroughly that little or no evidence remains to tie them to their crimes. By contrast, Disorganized serial killers act on impulse. Their behavior is random, making their next move difficult to predict. Investigators find bloodstains in the bathtub. Profilers believe the vampire killer may have bathed in a mixture of water and blood. The crimes are becoming more gruesome and the killer more deranged and more disorganized.
Now, we know darn well that your normal, everyday person is not going to fill a tub with water and bathe in the blood. So here we see personality. Here we see mental illness. We see mental deterioration.
From the evidence at the crime scene, Vorpagel and Ressler reconstruct the grisly sequence of events. And the terrifying portrait of a man they've never seen begins to emerge. The evidence reinforces the mind hunter's belief that the vampire killer's appearance will continue to deteriorate. He likely won't have changed his clothes. Unless he is single and living alone, the killer can't possibly escape notice. Their subject is a thin, disheveled loner, not more than 30 years old. Investigators are puzzled when murder victim Daniel Meredith's stolen red station wagon turns up a short distance away. Because it was found nearby, Ressler determines the vampire killer must have walked to the crime scene and then fled on foot after abandoning the car.
The killer would be residing within a very close distance to that abandoned car. I said approximately 1/4 mile.
The day after the Miroth murders, police receive an unrelated report that a dog has been shot and mutilated within blocks of the crime scene. For the mind hunters, it's the break they've been looking for. They know that as children, serial killers often mutilate or kill animals.
And he would go out and kill these pets, shooting them with the same gun he shot Wallen and Miroth and Meredith. Same gun, he'd shoot these pets. And then he'd gut them and drink their blood.
As more animals are found dead, the circle closes. The mind hunters are convinced that the vampire killer lives near the slaughtered animals and his human victims. He won't have traveled far. Police circulate the revised profile throughout the city in hopes that someone may have seen a disheveled or strange-acting man. Officers concentrate on a 1/4 mile radius of the murders. As a woman in her late 20s is leaving a Sacramento shopping center, a strange man approaches her. Hearing of the vampire killer murders, the woman contacts police. The man she eluded at the shopping center, she tells officers, is a former high school classmate, Richard Trenton Chase. She was shocked by his appearance. He had bloodstains on his sweatshirt. His eyes seemed sunk into their sockets. A yellowed crust was around his mouth. According to the woman's description, Chase fits the profile of the vampire killer. Armed with a search warrant, officers enter Chase's home. They're unprepared for what they find. Nazi paraphernalia dominates the small apartment. The place is littered with pamphlets about alien conspiracies. The chaos in the living room fits the profile of someone with an equally chaotic mind. In the kitchen, police find appliances spattered with blood, as well as newspaper articles about the murder of Terry Wallen. Several dishes in the refrigerator contain human tissue. In a kitchen drawer are knives taken from Wallen's home. Investigators also find a toolbox and blood-stained rubber boots. Chase is arrested and charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder, including the killing of Evelyn Miroth's nephew, 22-month-old Michael Ferriera, whose remains are found not far from Chase's apartment. The jury deliberates only a few hours before pronouncing Chase guilty on all counts. The sentence? Death in the electric chair. In 1979, Robert Ressler decided to talk to Chase in prison.
The reason I interviewed him, very frankly, was to validate, to do an update and validate the profiling work that I had done, to talk to him directly after working on the case, after seeing the crime scenes, after reading the police reports, and of course the court records. It's a way you really fine-tune your profiling.
Chase tells Ressler that he had killed only to preserve his own life. He needed blood, Chase says, to survive what he called soap dish poisoning. Chase believed that a gooey residue under his soap dish proved he was dying. He claimed his blood was drying out and corroding his body. His killings, Chase contended, were made in self-defense.
When he got down to the motivation, he said that the blood in his veins, the blood throughout his entire body, was turning to powder or dust, and that it was moving very slowly through his body, causing him to slow down, causing him to be fatigued and become very ill. And he felt this was being done, of course, he said, by the influence of the unidentified flying objects and the aliens. And he said that the only way he could counter this was to get a fresh supply of human blood.
What drives a man like Chase to murder? One FBI study of 36 serial killers revealed that although most began life in 2-parent homes, by age 2, almost half the boys' fathers had abandoned their families. Nearly half of the surveyed offenders reported cold or uncaring relationships with their mothers. 26 reported such relationships with their fathers. Nearly 70% of the families had histories of alcohol abuse. 1/3 had histories of drug abuse. Almost all reported some form of childhood psychological, physical, or sexual abuse. As children, many serial killers tortured animals. The majority did not graduate from high school. While the men had the required intelligence to perform skilled jobs, most had poor work histories. Only 20%, or 6 offenders, had ever managed to hold on to steady work. Yet, to all appearances, serial killers seem normal, like your neighbor or your friend.
Most of these people are like everyday people. They oftentimes are intelligent, they're attractive, they're good conversationalists. IQ's usually up about, at least high normal or beyond, and they're very deceptive.
Ressler was opposed to the death sentence for Chase. Chase, he argued, was mentally ill and should have been locked up for life in a prison hospital. Prison psychiatrists eventually agreed. Chase's sentence was commuted to life in the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. But Chase killed himself in his prison cell just after Christmas, 1980. He had stockpiled his antidepressant pills and then taken them all at once. Richard Trenton Chase's brief and chaotic reign of terror had come to an end. In contrast, one of America's most cunning serial killers was also one of the most organized. Highly intelligent and a talented photographer, this murderer specialized in kidnapping, rape, and torture. Police called him the unidentified subject, or unsub. He was a master of planning. He used film and audio tape to record his crimes. In a rented storage shed, he stockpiled pictures of his victims and recordings of their anguished cries. He was so meticulous that he would leave virtually no evidence of his atrocities, except for the photographs he took himself. Unsub customized his cars to resemble unmarked police cars. He added heavy-duty suspensions and strong restraints so that once inside, his victims had virtually no chance of escape. For 5 years, he traveled from state to state, never staying in one place too long. He was self-reliant, financing his crimes of kidnapping, rape, and torture with yet another crime. He was a skilled counterfeiter. He was confident that he would never be caught. In Manassas, Virginia, a team of former FBI agents pursue some of the world's most dangerous criminals. They call themselves the Academy Group. Between them, they have amassed years of experience investigating serial killings. Robert Hazelwood and Peter Smerrick are experts in psychological profiling of criminals.
If you in life are an impulsive person, you act without thinking, well then that crime scene may be very, very sloppy and be a reflection of your impulsive acts. On the other hand, if in life you're a cold, calculating individual, you don't take any unnecessary risks, well, that type of behavior can also be demonstrated at a crime scene.
Even with crime scene evidence, categorizing serial killers is difficult. Some serial killers demonstrate a mixture of disorganized and organized habits.
All too often, if an investigator starts looking at a crime scene and tries to put the offender into one of these nice, neat little categories, he's going to be disappointed when the person he arrests doesn't fit these categories in all areas.
In the seaside resort of Ocean City, Maryland, a young woman has just finished her shift at a convenience store. It is Memorial Day weekend, 1979. She is approached by a man who identifies himself as a police officer. He shows her his identification and is driving an unmarked police car. He tells the woman she is a suspect in a series of robberies, and he insists that she accompany him to police headquarters for questioning. He handcuffs her and pushes her into the car. It's the beginning of the longest and most terrifying experience of the woman's life. The man is no police officer. He is Unsub. And she's his latest victim. He takes her to a deserted building where he repeatedly rapes and tortures her. He photographs and tape records the ordeal.
I think one of the buzzwords today that we use is power and control. And whether you're dealing with a rapist, whether you're dealing with a serial killer, I think it still comes down to those two basic elements: power and control over the life of another individual.
Eventually, he will push the dazed woman back into his car and take her for one last ride.
He stops the automobile, opens up the passenger door, and rolls the woman out into a ditch. But he did not kill her. He allowed this victim to live. And as a result, within a number of hours when daylight came, she was found, she was rescued, and now became a full-fledged FBI investigation for kidnapping.
The FBI set up a massive manhunt for Unsub. The Ocean City woman was the latest in a long list of his victims. Some were tortured, others murdered. But many years passed before there was a break in the case. At the same time the FBI searched for Unsub, the Secret Service was on the trail of an elusive counterfeiter, a man who routinely passed fake $20 bills to unsuspecting store clerks at malls and shops in the Midwest and on the East Coast.
The one thing about any law enforcement agency, no matter how good we are, you need an element of luck, and you need the cooperation of an alert citizenry. In this instance, an alert clerk recognized a composite sketch as a customer who was currently in the store. She notified mall security notified local authorities, and within a short period of time, the suspect was apprehended.
The man police arrest is James Mitchell DeBartoleben. The Secret Service soon discovers that DeBartoleben is not just a counterfeiter. Secret Service agents search a storage unit rented by DeBartoleben. Inside are sheaves of the fake currency he's been passing. But to their shock, agents also discover a grotesque treasure trove of pictures and audio tape. The 1983 discovery unmasks the focus of the FBI investigation. Robert Hazelwood, then an FBI special agent who had written a criminal profile of Unsub, reviewed the materials seized from DeBartoleben's storage unit. Agents find thousands of photographs of DeBartoleben's victims. Among them are photos and audio tape of the woman abducted in Ocean City in 1979. Some of the photos date back to the early 1960s. They find the tools of a killer's trade. Victims' clothing, 10 guns, phony police identification, journals, blood-stained lingerie, and jewelry. 7 license plates allowed DeBartoleben to roam with little fear of his car being traced. The FBI also found handwritten notes. They contained codes that referred to past and future crimes. Although they have uncovered DeBartoleben's cache of damning images and sounds, agents have a problem. The killer's face remains literally out of the frame of the pictures he's taken with the victims. Investigators will have to prove DeBartoleben is the man in the photographs if they are to tie him conclusively to the rapes and deaths. During his FBI career, Peter Smerek was a forensic photography expert. The Secret Service sent him a number of DeBartoleben's photos to analyze. Several show a naked torso and uncovered arms. Smerek focuses his attention on the arms. They have a distinctive pattern of small moles and freckles. Smerek asks the Secret Service to temporarily remove DeBartoleben from his prison cell in order to photograph him in the same position as the person in the confiscated photos. The gambit pays off. When Smerek compares the photographs taken by the Secret Service to the ones found in the storage unit, he finds the patterns of freckles match. It's the proof agents desperately seek.
In all the years that I've worked as a criminal profiler, I can't think of another case where the offender was such an excellent photographer that unknowingly he took his own crime scene photographs, which ended up putting him in prison.
In 1984, DeBartoleben was tried and convicted. Today, he is in a federal penitentiary in Texas, sentenced to multiple life terms.
DeBartolome was one of the most dangerous criminals that ever walked the face of the earth, in my opinion. He was able to commit a number of crimes over a number of years in a variety of states and never have those crimes linked to him. That made him extremely dangerous. I think he's involved in a lot more crimes than we're aware of, yes.
By controlling every variable, weapons, location, and victim, the organized serial killer can slip through any dragnet, getting away with murder for years as he hides in plain sight. Such was the case of John Wayne Gacy, a prominent Chicago area businessman. Well-liked and respected, Gacy camouflaged a terrible secret. In 1978, in Des Plaines, Illinois, 15-year-old Robert Piest was reported missing. Having learned that Gacy was preparing a remodeling bid for a drugstore where Piest worked, Chief Detective Joseph Kozenzak of the Des Plaines Police Department goes to Gacy's home. Gacy denies knowing Piest. But investigators are suspicious. A background check reveals Gacy was once convicted of the sexual abuse of a teenage boy. Kozenzak places Gacy under surveillance. Initially cooperative with the police, Gacy becomes increasingly surly as Kozenzak's investigation continues.
He had a real mean look in his eyes. You could feel that there was hatred there, and that he really didn't care what we were investigating and was more concerned about trying to stay out of the way.
Gacy threatens a lawsuit if police continue their surveillance. Officers persist, suspecting that Gacy has much to hide. But even they are not prepared for what they'll find. For several weeks in 1978, Des Plaines police didn't let John Wayne Gacy out of their sight. Finally, it came time to search his house. The search uncovers a photo receipt that belonged to Robert Piest, linking Gacy to the boy's disappearance. A more thorough search would reveal even more. Chief Detective Kozenzak was the first to enter Gacy's home.
I was one of the first people that arrived at the house and went in through the back door, walked in. The whole place was just dark and kind of eerie. All the window blinds had been closed. And there was some sense of, I don't know, it was kind of ominous actually, because we were starting to believe that there could be people buried underneath Gacy's house based on the information we had gathered.
Police interviewed Gacy's ex-wife, friends, and former employees. Stories came out that Gacy propositioned his workers for sexual favors, that some had disappeared, and that his house had a strange odor. One of his workers suggests they checked the crawl space. After rigorous questioning, Gacy admits to detectives that 4 years earlier, in 1974, he killed one of his homosexual partners. Gacy claims the murder was in self-defense. He hid the man's body beneath the floor. Then, Gacy shocks investigators. He confesses that he murdered almost 36 young men and boys, also hiding many of their bodies under the floor. The confessions trigger an intense search for the missing men. Detectives examine the crawl space in the hope of finding Gacy's victims. They uncover 3 decomposing bodies and parts of other bodies. But the police don't stop with the crawl space. Knowing more bodies must be stashed under the house, they cut away the floor to find them. Eventually, they would find bodies buried under the dining room and garage floor. Under the house is a virtual killing field of buried bones and jumbled skeletons. Police arrest Gacy for the murder of Robert Peast, though the bodies they uncovered were dead too long to be the missing boy.
Gacy, he figured that the best way not to get caught for his crimes was to keep control of his victims after death. But when you're a psychopath, a sexual psychopath, he figured nobody would ever find those bodies down there because he was too smart, smarter than police, smarter than everybody.
By stashing his victims in his own home, Gacy maintained total control over them, even in death, and could remain confident that no one would ever find them without his knowledge. Such careful attention to detail, from planning to death, is the mark of a highly organized killer.
Everything about the case, especially when viewing the home inside, would indicate that Gacy was highly methodical, very well planned, and that he had thought these crimes out in great detail prior to embarking upon them.
Gacy also dumped his victims in the Des Plaines River. Police recovered 6 more bodies there. One of them was Robert Peast. When it was over, police identified the remains of 33 people.
Bob was very interested in this process because the FBI was formulating within their behavioral science unit kind of an in-depth study of people who commit a series of killings and wanting to know more about them, wanting to understand them, and this was a classic case.
The goal of the FBI's behavioral science unit is to map the mind of the serial killer.
So many people believe that it's the sexual act itself that he's performing with the victim that is of primary importance to him. In reality, it's the entire game that's important to them. The selection process, the surveillance, knowing that I have selected you to become my victim and you don't know it. And then all of the planning that goes into the stages of actually conducting the abduction. And so they are rehearsing this and living this maybe for weeks or months before the actual abduction occurs. And to a certain extent, the sexual activity afterwards may almost be an aftermath.
With each killing, Gacy refined his methods, learned from his mistakes, and improved on his successes. He carefully lured his victims into a well-designed trap, distracting them with weightlifting, plying them with alcohol, and showing pornographic movies.
Bring it down to your chest, all the way down. Okay, can you bring it up? You can lift it up.
He eventually grew so confident that he brazenly targeted a boy from his own neighborhood. Many victims came to Gacy's home hoping to get a job with his contracting firm. He'd meet with them in his garage. The soundproof garage was designed by Gacy and constructed by his company. A motorized door was the only way in or out. If his victim didn't object, Gacy would demonstrate a magic trick using trick handcuffs.
Like this. Real good, right? Okay. Ready?
After showing how the handcuffs work, Gacy would persuade his victim to try them.
Now, you did it the easy way, the hard way.
Then he would challenge him to attempt the trick behind his back. If the victim agreed, the trap was sprung. Gacy would switch the trick handcuffs for real ones. Once immobilized, the victim was at Gacy's mercy.
Hey, come on, man. 1, 2, 3. Try to twist it.
Only Gacy knows exactly what happened
You have to
next.
relax. Come on, Bobby, relax. Okay.
Like serial rapist and killer James Mitchell DeBartoleben, Gacy thought he had completely covered his tracks. But mementos found during the search of Gacy's home provided key evidence, though police didn't know it at the time. Detectives discovered driver's licenses, belt buckles, rings, and other personal effects. Ressler alerted investigators to the importance of these objects.
We had actually found these items not fully realizing what we had found till after Bob came in and started pointing out to us that to you a belt buckle is not important, but to the person who committed the crime, it's very important. It's a visual process to help relive the crime at any given time that he wants to do so.
The souvenirs are a reminder of his past murders and an inspiration to kill again.
To Gacy, this is some sort of a symbol of his success, a reminder. It enhances his fantasy and carries him on to the next victim. Trophies, I call them, for the serial killer, where they kind of enhances their fantasy to have these objects around.
The most disturbing object found in Gacy's house was a map indicating job sites around the United States where he had worked as a contractor. Ressler believes it's likely that Gacy wouldn't have confined his killings to Chicago.
And it only seemed logical that if Gacy's traveling doing this in Chicago, he's doing it elsewhere as well. That's why I firmly believe that John Gacy killed more than the 33 he was convicted of. I think probably maybe twice that number.
Forensic teams dismantled Gacy's house. In all, they recovered 27 bodies there. How many more Gacy killed, police would never know. For 10 years, starting in 1979, Ressler interviewed Gacy in prison. Ressler was surprised to learn that he had grown up 4 blocks from the killer in suburban Chicago. Gacy even remembered delivering groceries to the Ressler family, recalling in detail the distinctive flower pots that Ressler's mother used. Gacy also had darker recollections. He described for Ressler a turbulent relationship with his father. Ressler wasn't surprised. Nearly all the serial killers he knows of tell similar stories.
And it's all documented. I ran away from home, as you know, when I was 19 years old because I couldn't get along with my father. I mean, he was just overbearing. I was dumb and stupid, never would amount to anything, and so I just took off and said, to hell with it. I was gone for 3 months. Well, it's more likely.
From prison, Gacy made a painting and sent it to Ressler.
What is amazing is now...
It depicted Gacy dressed in a clown costume.
When I got into clown makeup, I regressed into childhood. It was fun being a clown because you could be yourself or just let yourself go and act a fool. You know how people, if you're a businessman, you've got to keep a certain rapport and stuff like that, and everybody looks for you for an image. But as a clown with the makeup on, you could be slapstick and funny and have a good time. That's why I always enjoyed clowning.
In Gacy's painting, he stands in a grove of evergreen trees, surrounded by balloons. The inscription on the back reads, "You cannot hope to enjoy the harvest without first laboring in the fields." Gacy refused to explain the painting's meaning to Ressler or to anyone else. Ressler believes the painting hints at many more murders Gacy committed.
He said you can get away with a lot of things when you're behaving as a clown because people see you as something funny, they see you as something as amusing. They don't know what's beneath the grease paint. They don't know what's beneath the cloth. He said clowns can get away with murder.
John Wayne Gacy died by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. Since the early years of criminal profiling in the 1970s, other serial murderers have been identified and caught. Such names as Son of Sam, Ted Bundy, and Jeffrey Dahmer have become known to mind hunters and to a public alternately fascinated and repelled by their crimes.
Serial killers are driven by control, by dominance, by discipline, by authority. They have very warped concepts of interaction with another human being. They don't look at another human being as a human being, they look at them as an object.
Robert Ressler believes that serial killing, while not limited to the United States, has intensified in this country since the end of World War II. Part of the reason has to do with a culture that glamorizes and encourages violence.
Culture produces violent crime. I would say 75% of the world's serial killers are American products. Yeah, it sounds very strange, but it's one of our, it's like America, it's like a baseball, apple pie mom and serial homicide. It's unfortunate, and it's certainly tragic in a sense, but it's one thing in the world of criminology. The United States is absolutely broken all records.
Profilers must take care that the poisonous thoughts of those they track don't pollute their own. For one who stares into the abyss, there is a danger of falling in. Ressler says that mind hunters must work their way back from the brink every day of their lives.
I've maintained a balance, I think, consciously, by isolating myself from the horror of what I see. I go to work at 8, I quit at 5, I go back to a normal life, I have a drink, I watch the news, I cut the grass. I've kept a perspective. I've kept in tune with the mainstream and the normal people of society.
For Ressler, profiling is less about drama than about analysis. Observe, think, conclude, and realize there are no easy or quick answers.
And the movie concepts is that the profiler will solve the case, everybody can fold up their tents and go home. Profiling is one tool in the overall toolbox of the investigator. It gives him one more dimension, one more piece of that puzzle. And when you put it all together, sometimes it's very effective.
Profilers explore the mind's darkest regions, dragging what's hidden into the light of day. Only then can it be examined and learned from.
The value of profiling, as in this case of Richard Chase, is to give the police some concept, some psychological portrait or an image of the logical type of subject that they're looking for, to give them a clear picture, because otherwise it's just an empty room.
These human monsters feel they can never be caught, that they are invulnerable. Yet, with each new victim, each drop of blood, each fiber or DNA strand left at the scene of a crime, the mind hunters probe deeper into the killer's mind. Perhaps the day will come when profilers won't be needed. But for now, the mind hunters will have to continue looking into the abyss.